everybody, Aaron Cowan, Sage Dynamics, and this is the Glock MOS 3. Something that snuck out back in 2019 and has continued to be almost a myth on the internet was direct milled factory OEM Glock slides for Gen 5 for different optic footprints. The MOS 3 is particular to the Delta Point Pro, which we'll get into. Now this is something that a lot of people have been asking for from Glock. It doesn't make a lot of sense if you think about it, for red dots to be increasing, almost meteoric increase in popularity, and for the OEM companies not to offer direct milled options or an improvement on whatever their system is. If you've been following me for a while, you've been to a red dot class with me, you know how I feel about the MOS plate system. I hate it. It is the worst OEM offering that I'm aware of, and I've tried most of them at this point, for a modular system for red dots. And I really like modular ideas. Some people get into like, oh, direct milled is best, direct milled is best, and I'm like, all right, well, direct mill and mount an optic on your rifle then. We make exceptions for certain things. We don't realize that we're doing the same thing somewhere else. On rifles, we always have to have a second level interface, almost always have to have a second level interface in order to mount an optic. So if I buy a red dot, an aim point, or scope, or whatever I'm getting, I'm gonna have some kind of mount system that puts it on the rifle. So saying you can't have that on the handgun has always been a little kind of inconsistent to me. So I have no issue whatsoever with modular systems. In fact, I think it's brilliant because it allows your gun to be forward thinking. So if the next latest and greatest optic doesn't have the same footprint as the optic you milled your gun for, you're not stuck with that slide. If somebody released an optic tomorrow that just 100% outperformed objectively every other open emitter optic or whatever optic was on the market, no one would buy your secondhand slide. Well, almost no one would buy your secondhand slide when you had to buy a new slide to get the new optic. So direct milling provides a lot of advantages. However, modular systems are great. The problem with Glock's modular system, the weak point is the MIM or cast metal, or what we're going to call it, plate systems. They can come warped, they're very brittle, they break very easily, and they don't allow a lot of screw depth into the slide. So what occurs very often, what I like to refer to as surprise iron sights. I'll have a student shooting with his Glock MOS gun, and then suddenly his optic just flies away, maybe hits him in the face, gives him a little pirate eye, or we got to do hands across the range to find the damn thing because his plate system had failed, cracked, warped, bent, the threading had stripped out of the screw. Any number of other situations could have happened, and I've seen pretty much every way that an MOS could break at this point, and then he's left with, well, surprise iron sights. Glock coming up with a fix for that solution could be very easily. They could just start making those plates out of steel or really good aluminum, but that's not something they've chosen to do. So there is the MOS 3, which is a direct mill. This particular one, the MOS 3, is for the Delta Point Pro footprint. They also have an MOS 4 and an MOS 5. One of them is for an RMR specific footprint. The other one is being kept under wraps, or at least I have not been able to find definitively what footprint it's for. Now, one of the aggravating things about the MOS 3 that you may find if you're already looking it up, or maybe you're watching this video 2 years after it's become commonplace, is you can't really get a definitive answer on if these things are going to be directly available or if they were only available in limited numbers. I have it on good authority that they are going to be going into limited production to full production, so you will be able to get them. Now, for the citizen market, if you're not, this isn't going to be a duty gun for you, this might not be something you even care about. You might be like, well, I already have this, or I already have that, or I have this slide milled, or I bought this aftermarket gun from this company, so what do I care about a direct milled option from the manufacturer? If you're in law enforcement, or security company, or even maybe military, you might be like, well, I'm not allowed to use all this cool aftermarket stuff, so I'm kind of stuck with whatever the manufacturer provides. Now you have a solution. If your department, for some reason, has chosen the Delta Point Pro, which is probably my least favorite of the really popular red dots just because of its overall fragility and a history of performance issues. Me personally, I've got multiple Delta Point Pros that broke in drop testing, and I've also got some that I killed just shooting them with recoil. Now, they have released a new version with a updated circuitry on the inside, and I've just gotten into one of those, but it's still going to have that overall fragility. I'm not doing a review on this for the purpose of this video for two reasons. One, this isn't my gun. I had to borrow this in order to do a video on it, in order to shoot it, in order to get some feel for it, in order to tell you how I feel about it. Two, I only have the MOS 3, which is for the Delta Point, so I know if I drop test this to test the overall mount performance, I'm going to break the optics that's on it, so it kind of ruins my ability to get an objective view. Generally, as you know, when I do drops, I choose an optic I know can survive the harsh treatment of gravity when connecting the optic with a hard surface. So this video is 100% informational on the overall features of the MOS 3. Now it's on a Gen 5 17, which is already known to be a very good gun. Some people still want to change out some of the other overall performance parts of the Glock, but I can say in my experience, the Gen 5 Glock is the Glock that I have to change the least on. Got my ambi slide catch slide release, reversible magazine release. I've got their target match barrel. Marksman barrel, I'm sorry, which has a recessed crown. It's a very accurate gun. This is the most accurate of all the Glocks generation-wise I've shot. My Gen 4s were more accurate than my Gen 3s, and my Gen 5 is more accurate than my Gen 4s. The actual milling itself, one curious thing they did is they moved everything really far back on the gun, if you look at it there. So everything sits behind the extractor. And I think the reason for that is Glock is apprehensive to mill down above that extractor because maybe they've found in their own testing or whatever that's going to weaken that area and maybe cause some kind of issues with the gun. The aftermarket's kind of already proven that incorrect. There's a lot of companies that mill in that same area to move the optic further forward, and there haven't been a lot of QC issues when it's done correctly. A lot of the big name aftermarket companies do that, and it's not an issue. But for whatever reason, Glock chose, at least with the MOS 3, to move it much further back. And the Delta Point Pro is a much longer optic than some of the other optics that are out there. So you lose your rear dovetail, which means you're married to whatever aftermarket sight will attach to the Delta Point Pro. In this case, I went with the C&H Precision rear sight notch, which is a really good rear sight notch for the overall height of this optic. It does sit really low though. It is surprisingly a very deep pocket. It's actually, to me, it seems considerably lower than what you'd get from an MOS. Although the MOS, you also have to add the overall thickness of the plate. So the footprint itself, I've got 4 recoil bosses, which work really well with the Delta Point Pro and some of the other optics that share the Delta Point Pro footprint. And there's really not much else to talk about as far as the gun goes, because it's just a Gen 5 17 that's direct milled by Glock to accept this particular footprint. In this case, Delta Point Pro. Delta Point Pro is what I put on it. Overall performance of the gun is what you'd expect from a Gen 5 Glock that has had no aftermarket work done to it whatsoever. I've got the accuracy, I've got the reliability that I'm going to get for Glock, and one of the reasons that Glock is so popular. From a law enforcement perspective, this gives a department a turnkey option. Now, if you order the gun, it comes with a footprint cover plate which has a rear sight dovetail on it. So you can still run your aftermarket sights on that, or, as probably the only reason you would have bought the gun to begin with, take that plate off, direct mount, in this case with the MOS 3, your Delta Point Pro, and you are good to go. How do I feel about it? I think I'm glad that Glock offers it, but I'm not really going to give them a great deal of praise because they offer it, if that makes any sense. It's like being in a competition to see who can put on Velcro shoes the fastest. Yeah, somebody's going to stand out, but you're still just competing with something that's beyond basic. You should be able to do different things. So for Glock to take this long to offer this as an option for non-contract, in the past, if a customer asked for it and there was enough guns being ordered, they would do it, just like any gun company who likes money would. But to offer it to the general public, and Glock is not as bad as some of the other companies, but they have historically had this issue where they treat the law enforcement military one way and they treat the citizen civilian market differently. And I don't really understand that, because everybody wants to buy guns and you want everybody's money, but some companies tend to have preferential treatment or give preferential treatment to law enforcement military because that's who they use in their glossy magazine ads and online ads that they put on their different websites and big posters at SHOT Show and NRA Show and things like that. I think this is too little too late, honestly. But the caveat to that is, for the law enforcement perspective, if your department is apprehensive to get away from Glock, now you can get a direct milled option that eliminates the failure point of the MOS plate system. So in that regard, this is awesome, and I'm glad it's available. I don't know if you're gonna be able to get slide only, so you might have to buy a whole new gun, but there's not really wrong with that, right? Who doesn't want another gun? And this is gonna provide that solution. Now going forward, I expect Glock to be just as slow to change as they historically always have been. If the new optic comes along that doesn't share this footprint, or one of the footprints that's offered with the MOS 3, MOS 4, MOS 5, you can expect for them to take their sweet time doing it, because that's just Glock. But if you're curious about the MOS 3, this is what you're looking at. It doesn't come with anything frilly. You're still getting Glock's placeholder plastic sights. You got your cover plate, and you've got your standard, whatever comes with your blue label, your red label, or whatever you're getting Glock. Doesn't even come with mounting screws, which I guess it doesn't have to because the optic comes with that, and everything is OEM specific, so the screws that come with the Delta Point Pro give you direct mounting. Screw channels are nice and deep as they could make them, and you don't have to worry about a secondary interface, like I said, of the MOS plate, so you get a really good mount with an overall pretty deep shoe, which I'm pretty happy about, and on the Delta Point Pro, the deeper the better because of the overall height of the optic anyway. I can't really say anything else about this gun other than it exists, and it is a solution, direct mill solution, for people who are interested in it. I think they could have done a better job with especially the Delta Point Pro version as far as the cut positioning, so you could maybe retain what rear sight you wanted to retain because it's doable. This Aftermarket, like I said, has already proven that. But not a huge deal since you can put a rear backup sight, and of course it's just a backup sight anyway, onto the optic body itself. It is holster compatible with your DO line or your RDS line Sparlin for duty holster compatibility. And as far as aftermarket holster goes, if your aftermarket holster fits a Gen 5 17 with a red dot, it's going to fit this just fine. No compatibility issues there. Because this isn't my gun, I'm not doing my traditional 2,000 round review on it, but I wanted to do an informational on it, especially since once people found out about it, I got a lot of questions about it because of how critical I've been of the MOS system in general. This is definitely improvement over the plate system, but I'd like to see them improve the plate system. I'm Eric Count with Sage Dynamics. Train accordingly.